In a bustling African city where tall buildings kissed the clouds and luxury cars painted the streets with their shine, there lived a man of enormous wealth. His name was Chief Adewale, a billionaire known across the land for his generosity, power, and wisdom. But as rich as he was, his greatest treasure was his only son, Daniel. Daniel had been raised in comfort. He never knew hunger, never walked barefoot, never sat under the scorching sun without shade. From the finest schools to private chauffeurs, everything in his life was golden. Yet, as often happens when wealth comes too easily, Daniel's heart grew proud. He carried himself like a prince among peasants, blind to the struggles of ordinary people. One sunny afternoon, Daniel was walking through the crowded streets near his father's office. He wore a tailored suit, shiny leather shoes imported from Italy, and a watch worth more than most families earned in years. People moved aside as he passed, whispering, "That's Chief Adewale's son." Daniel loved the attention. But then, at the corner of the street, he saw a frail old man sitting on a low stool. His clothes were torn, his hands rough, and before him lay a small wooden box filled with shoe polish. The man was a shoemaker. His eyes were tired, but when he saw Daniel's polished shoes, he smiled warmly and said, "Good afternoon, young master. Let me polish those fine shoes for you. Only a small price, just to feed myself today." Daniel stopped and looked at him with disdain. He laughed loudly, drawing the attention of the crowd. "Do you know how much these shoes cost?" he asked mockingly. "Your whole life, old man, cannot buy even the lace of my shoe. How dare you think your filthy hands can touch them?" The old man's smile faded, but he did not respond in anger. Instead, he bowed his head slightly and said, "Young man, one day you may learn that wealth does not stay forever. Respect is worth more than gold." Daniel sneered. "Respect? From you? Look at yourself, old, dirty, useless. My shoes alone are worth more than your entire existence. Next time, don't speak to me." The people nearby murmured. Some shook their heads in pity for the old man, others in disapproval of Daniel's arrogance. But Daniel didn't care. He laughed again, pushed past the old man, and continued walking proudly down the street. The shoemaker watched him leave, then whispered softly, "We shall see. Life has a way of humbling the proud." The wind carried his words away, but not his meaning. And though Daniel didn't know it, his life was about to change in ways he could never imagine. The insult Daniel hurled at the shoemaker did not vanish like smoke. It clung to the air, lingering in the hearts of those who heard it. People whispered, shaking their heads, saying, "The young heir of Chief Adewale has no respect. Wealth has blinded him." But the old shoemaker, the man with cracked hands and a weary smile, carried no anger. Each day, he rose with the sun, sat at his usual corner, and polished shoes for anyone who stopped. He was not a man who measured his life by riches, he measured it by wisdom. That evening, as the last of the daylight faded, the old man packed away his brushes and polish into the little wooden box that had served him faithfully for years. A boy who often ran errands nearby approached and asked, "Baba, why didn't you curse that proud young man when he insulted you? If it were me, I would have shouted at him." The shoemaker chuckled softly, his face calm. "My son, when the river swells in pride, let it. The time will come when it meets the rocks, and only then does it learn humility. Anger is wasted breath. Life itself will correct him." The boy frowned. He didn't fully understand, but the weight in the old man's tone made him quiet. Meanwhile, across town, in the mansion of Chief Adewale, Daniel reclined on a velvet chair, his legs stretched arrogantly across the table. A glass of imported wine was in his hand, his phone glowing with messages from friends who adored his lavish lifestyle. He replayed the scene in his mind, how the old shoemaker had dared to speak to him, and how he had humiliated the man before the crowd. The memory brought him satisfaction. But his father did not share that satisfaction. Chief Adewale had lived a lifetime of hardship before wealth came to him. He knew the value of humility, and when he heard whispers of what his son had done, his heart grew heavy. That night, he summoned Daniel. The boy entered casually, dressed in fine silk, his confidence overflowing. "Sit down, Daniel," Chief Adewale said sternly. Daniel sat, smirking. "What is it, father? You look troubled. Surely it's not about that shoemaker again. People talk too much." Adewale's voice was calm but sharp. "Yes, it is about him. I heard you mocked him, insulted his poverty, and even told him his life was worth less than your shoes. Is this true?" Daniel burst into laughter. "And what if it is true? Father, let's be honest. That man is nothing. Look at him, ragged, weak, old. He is beneath us. Why should I lower myself to speak kindly to someone like that?" Adewale leaned forward, his eyes piercing. "Daniel, listen carefully. Wealth is a river, it flows today, but tomorrow it may dry up. If you drink too greedily, you may find yourself thirsty when it is gone. A man is not measured by his shoes or his watch, but by how he treats those who have nothing to give him. Mocking the poor is like mocking the hands of God that sustain you." Daniel sighed and waved his hand dismissively. "Father, you sound like the preachers at church. Always talking about humility and respect. But look at me, I am young, rich, and powerful. People move aside when I walk. That is all that matters." Adewale's face hardened. He had given his son everything, education, luxury, opportunities, but he could not give him wisdom. That Daniel would have to learn through life's trials. And Adewale prayed that lesson would not come too harshly. "Mark my words, Daniel," he said gravely. "One day you will stand in need of the very men you mocked. Remember this when the time comes." Daniel only chuckled and left the room, convinced that his father was overreacting. Days passed, and Daniel continued in his arrogance. He spent his time flaunting wealth, mocking workers, and boasting to his friends. But the old shoemaker, he continued his work with patience. His hands polished shoes, but his heart polished lessons in silence. One morning, a group of young men gathered near the shoemaker's corner. They spoke of Daniel's insults and shook their heads. "Baba," one of them asked, "why do you still sit here after what he said? Doesn't it pain you?" The old man smiled faintly. "Pain? No. Life has shown me many things. When a young tree grows too quickly, its branches break in the storm. That boy has grown too fast in pride. The storm will come, and then he will remember." The young man fell silent. His words carried a strange certainty, as if he had glimpsed something hidden. That very evening, preparations began at Chief Adewale's mansion for a grand celebration. Leaders, dignitaries, and businessmen from across the nation were invited. The event was to honor Adewale's decades of success, a night of glory that would showcase his wealth and influence. Daniel was thrilled. This was his stage, his chance to shine before the richest and most powerful people. He strutted about like a peacock, giving orders to the workers who decorated the mansion. "You there," he barked at a maid. "Place more gold on the tables. Everything must glitter. And you," he snapped at a young servant, "do not spill a single drop of wine. My shoes cost more than your life, remember that." The servants bowed silently, though their hearts ached. They murmured among themselves, "He thinks riches make a man. But it is his father's wisdom that keeps this house standing." On the other side of the city, the shoemaker sat quietly under the dim glow of a lantern, his brush moving gently over a worn pair of shoes. He paused, lifted his eyes to the night sky, and whispered, "The time is near. May the boy learn his lesson, and may it not destroy him." The night of the grand celebration finally arrived. The mansion sparkled like a palace, glowing with golden lights that could be seen from miles away. Expensive cars lined the driveway, one after another, carrying dignitaries, businessmen, and powerful leaders. The air was alive with laughter, music, and the sweet aroma of dishes fit for kings. Daniel moved among the guests like a prince. His suit was tailored to perfection, his watch glimmered, and his smile carried arrogance rather than charm. People greeted him politely, but many exchanged secret glances. They had heard the stories of his pride, and tonight, they saw it firsthand. At the dining hall, Daniel clinked his glass loudly, drawing everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he declared with a grin, "tonight is not just about my father's success. It is about legacy. And I am proud to be the heir of all this." His words dripped with self-importance, as though the riches of his father already belonged to him. Some clapped politely, but whispers rippled through the room. Chief Adewale, sitting at the head of the table, lowered his gaze in silence. Then, in the middle of the feast, a servant accidentally spilled a drop of wine near Daniel's shoes. Daniel's face darkened instantly. He shoved the servant roughly, his voice thunderous, "Do you know how much these shoes cost? Your whole family could not afford them in 10 lifetimes." The hall fell silent. Guests stared in shock. Chief Adewale's chest rose with restrained fury, but before he could speak, a sudden hush fell across the room. For at that very moment, Chief Adewale clutched his chest. His face turned pale. The great billionaire staggered, his body trembling. A cry of alarm echoed through the hall as he collapsed to the ground. The music stopped. The laughter died. Chaos swept the mansion. And among the panic, Daniel stood frozen, pride melting into fear. Panic erupted in the hall. Guests screamed, some rushed forward, others backed away in shock. Chief Adewale, the mighty billionaire whose name carried power across the nation, now lay helpless on the polished marble floor. His breathing was shallow, his eyes half closed. "Call an ambulance," one of the dignitaries shouted. Servants scattered, fumbling with phones, but the network was jammed, too many people, too much noise. Daniel dropped to his knees beside his father, his arrogance gone in an instant. "Father! Father, stay with me." His voice cracked with fear, trembling like a child's. But Chief Adewale's lips moved faintly, whispering something Daniel could not hear. The guests surrounded them, helpless. Wealth filled the mansion, yet at that moment, it all meant nothing. Gold, diamonds, cars, houses, none could save the man who gasped for life before their eyes. Then, from the corner of the crowd, a voice rose. Calm. Steady. Familiar. "Step aside," it said. Heads turned. There stood the old shoemaker, his clothes worn, his hands calloused, but his presence commanding. Nobody had seen him enter, yet there he was, his wooden box still slung over his shoulder. Daniel's eyes widened in disbelief. "You? What are you doing here?" The old man did not answer him. He knelt beside Chief Adewale, placing a hand gently on his chest. With movements both careful and skilled, he pressed, lifted, and breathed in rhythm, the actions of a man who had once been more than a shoemaker. The hall was silent now, all eyes fixed on the frail figure working desperately to save the billionaire. Daniel's hands shook. His mind echoed with his father's warning, "One day, you will stand in need of the very men you mocked." And tonight, that prophecy was unfolding before him. The grand hall stood frozen, breaths held as the old shoemaker worked steadily over Chief Adewale's body. His hands, though wrinkled and scarred, moved with the precision of a man who had once known healing. Press, release, breathe, press again. Minutes felt like hours. Daniel crouched nearby, tears filling his eyes, whispering desperately, "Father, please don't leave me." The arrogant heir, once so full of pride, now trembled like a lost child. Then, a sound broke the silence. A cough. Weak at first, then stronger. Chief Adewale's chest rose, and color returned faintly to his cheeks. Gasps of relief filled the hall as the billionaire's eyes fluttered open. "He lives," the shoemaker said quietly, leaning back. His voice was steady, but his face was pale from the effort. Cries of joy echoed through the mansion. Some guests rushed to thank the old man, bowing to him with respect. But Daniel could not move. His shame weighed heavier than stone. At last, Chief Adewale's gaze turned toward his son. His voice was weak but firm. Daniel, what did I tell you? The man you mocked is the man who saved me tonight. Daniel's head dropped. Tears spilled freely down his face. He turned to the shoemaker, his voice breaking. Sir. I was wrong. Forgive me. I thought my wealth made me greater. But tonight I see the truth. Without you, I would have lost my father. Please, forgive my foolishness. The old man studied him quietly. Then, with a gentle smile, he placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. My son, wealth is a gift but pride is a curse. A rich man who mocks the poor is poorer than he knows. Remember, respect is the true crown of a man. Without it, gold and silver are dust. The hall was silent again, every guest hanging on his words. The shoemaker stood, lifted his wooden box, and prepared to leave. But before he stepped away, he turned back and said, Chief Adewale, you are blessed with riches. But tonight, you are more blessed with a lesson for your son. May he carry it wisely. And with that, he disappeared into the night, his figure swallowed by shadows, as quietly as he had arrived. From that day forward, Daniel was never the same. The proud heir who once mocked the poor became a man of humility. He greeted workers with respect, he helped strangers, and he bowed to the wisdom of the humble. And the people whispered again, but this time with wonder, the heir of Chief Adewale has changed. Wealth no longer blinds him. He has learned the lesson of life. For in the end, riches fade, but humility endures. And respect shines brighter than gold. And that, my friends, is the lesson of Daniel, the proud heir who discovered that wealth without humility is nothing. Remember, life always finds a way to humble the arrogant. If you were touched by this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the African Folk Tales, and share it so that others may also learn the wisdom hidden in our stories. More powerful tales await you here. Until next time, stay humble, stay wise, and keep the spirit of our African folk tales alive.